This is Colwyn Bay, and I'm sat under what is, or what was, the Victoria Pier. You'll have to excuse some of the squeaking and banging, the shifting the sand off the promenade. It was originally opened in 1900, and it was extended in 1903 to a whopping 227 metres, which is quite a lot longer than it is today. It's been rather an unlucky pier. Its first two pavilions burnt down. Piers have a habit of burning down. In the 1970s they built the third pavilion here, and they opened a nightclub in it called the Dixieland Show Bar. And would you believe it, they had such bands on as The Damned and The Specials, people like Elvis Costello and Slade, and even Black Flag, you know, with Henry Rollins. By the 90s the pier had fell into a bit of disrepair, and it was a bit dangerous to let people on it, and it was closed altogether in 2007. They sort of left derelict for nearly a decade, and in 2017 the pavilion at the end fell into the sea, onto the beach. So the year after they dismantled it, despite the fact that it was grade 2 listed. I don't suppose there was anything they could do about it. But this year in 2021 they opened this small section of it, and it's a little bit puny in comparison with the old pier, but it's definitely got the vibe of an old Victorian pier. It's got the colours on the paintwork exactly right, and I imagine some people are going to have their wedding photographs stuck on this pier, and some men with curly moustaches are going to listen to some trad jazz in the summer. But Colwyn Bay isn't just famous for rock and roll stars playing at the end of the pier. There's quite a few famous people who come from Colwyn Bay. The late Terry Jones from Monty Python, he was from Colwyn Bay. And the late Paula Yates, off the Tube, who was married to Bob Geldof, she was from Colwyn Bay. James Bond himself, Timothy Dalton. And lest we forget the patron saint of Cobbles, the star of Coronation Street, the chairman of the board, Bill Ken Barlow Roach, is also from Colwyn Bay. But he's not the only saintly figure from around the area. Let's go and have a look at a little church.
Protest all you like, we both know, with goodwill on your side and a little time, you can have just what you like. We both know things could be easy if you just try. You'd be better off this time. Have it your own way if you like. Things could be easy if you just try.
This is the chapel of St Trillo, and you'll have to excuse again if you hear some squeaking and banging in the background. It's Colwyn Bay Council. They seem to be doing up Colwyn Bay today. It's possibly because I've come out bimbling on a Friday rather than my usual Saturday or Sunday. But who is St Trillo, and why did he build the chapel? St Trillo was the son of a king, the king of Brittany, but it wasn't called Brittany at the time. It was called Armorica. Not America, Armorica. And Armorica was a kingdom in between the Seine and the River Loire in France. And the king was called Ifilhael, and he sent his son Trillo on missionary work here to Wales. And St Trillo lived in the chapel for 20 years, from 570 AD onwards. The chapel's thought to be built over an ancient spring. and the water that comes out of it is thought to be holy. And if you've been baptised in the area, you were probably baptised with water from St Trillo's chapel. It's thought to be the smallest church in the UK, and only 6 people can sit down inside, with the vicar stood at the front. But that's enough about saints. Let's go and visit some angels.
Just try. I know you heard every word, every line, but you're missing it. Why won't you figure it out? Figure it. I know I talk really loud, if you heard, oh it's deafening. You still won't figure it out. Figure it. With a simple frame of mind and a little time, you can protest all you like. We both know, with goodwill on your side and a little time, you can have just what you like. We both know it's easy if you just try. Better off this time. Have it your own way if you like. It's easy if you just try.
This is Angel Bay, and if you hear any funny noises in the background here, it's not Colwyn Bay Council. There's something far more exciting than that. Angel Bay sits at the foot of the Little Orme, which is what we call a hump, 100 metre prominence. In fact, it's 141 metres to be exact, and it has 2 summits, one with a trig point on the top if you fancy climbing up there. I've climbed up there before. In fact, I've even had a little bit of a naughty camp at the top. Up until 1936 it was a limestone quarry, but they started fairly late in the Victorian era, which is a mere blink of an eye away for Welsh quarrying. The Welsh have been mining and quarrying for centuries. In 1937 the Royal Artillery took over the site and put a barracks here, and they anchored a ship out in the bay, and they would fire all the weapons at it and test them out and train people how to fire them. And even to this day, artillery shells still wash up on the beach. But the most exciting thing to wash up on the beach here is a large colony of grey seals and a few common seals. Common seals aren't actually as common as the name makes out. And at this time of year, they have the young. They just lounge about over Christmas like we do.
You can have just what you like. Both know it's easy if you just try. Better off this time. Have it your own way if you like. It's easy if you just try. Time. You can protest all you like. We both know, with goodwill on your side and a little time, you can have just what you like. We both know it's easy if you just try. Better off this time. Have it your own way if you like. It's easy if you just try. It's easy if you just try. Better off this time. Have it your own way if you like. It's easy if you
This is Llandudno, or Llandudno if you're from Wales. And the name Llandudno comes from its patron saint, Saint Tudno. That's Tudno with a T, not Dudno with a D. And the clan bit, or the land bit if you're from England, comes from the old Welsh word meaning village around a church. So Llandudno is literally the village around the church of Saint Tudno. It's Wales's largest seaside resort. You can think about it like Blackpool for middle-class nanas. The buildings look spectacular. If you just shown someone a picture and they didn't know where Llandudno was, they'd be excused for thinking it was somewhere in Switzerland on the shores of Lake Geneva. It's definitely got a Poirot vibe to it, or a Grand Budapest Hotel kind of feel. It features the Great Orme, not the little Orme that we were just halfway up, but its big brother, the Great Orme, and that stands at over 200 metres. So I suppose that's a tump rather than a hump. The Great Orme is home to a colony of wild cashmere goats, and you may have seen them on the news in 2020 when we had all the lockdowns. The cashmere goats came into the centre of the town, started eating all the potted plants and taking advantage of the place while there was no tourists. The herd of goats started as just 2 goats, and they were re-gifted to the town of Llandudno by Queen Victoria. She'd been given the 2 goats by the Shah of Persia. She obviously didn't have anywhere to put them, so she gave them to Llandudno. It also features another pier, and this one's still intact, unlike the one at Colwyn Bay. And it's a massive 700 metres long. And it's the second incarnation of a pier that's been built here in Llandudno. The first one was just a wooden pier, and the railway that came from Conway into Llandudno actually stopped at the end of the pier. In 1877 they built this incarnation of the pier, and it actually has a bit at the end of the pier where ocean-going vessels can dock. And there used to be regular crossings in the summer over to the Isle of Man on the Lady of Man ferry. Before all this COVID nonsense, there was a boat called the Waverley that took you from the docks at Liverpool all the way to here in Llandudno for 1 weekend a year. Hopefully that comes back next year and we get to Bimble on it. What do you reckon?